Okay, so in this video we're going to continue working on the shoebox spreadsheet that we set up over the last few weeks. We're going to look at doing this so that we can create graphs and charts to help us start to understand the data in more depth. Now in this video we will recap what we've done up to this point. We'll look at a feature of Excel called sorting. We'll look at using filters on our Excel spreadsheet, and we'll look at grouping data on the spreadsheet as well. And also, we'll work through the process of creating a number of useful graphs and charts so that we can start to draw conclusions from our data. Now, you'll need to have the shoebox task spreadsheet open on your computer as you work through this video, because this is a video tutorial. At several points throughout the video, you'll be instructed to pause the video and to carry out the task that has just been demonstrated in the video on your own copy of the spreadsheet. If you find yourself getting lost during a task, remember to use the undo button to undo any mistakes. And after you've completed each task, it is strongly recommended that you save your work. This way, if things go horribly wrong during the next task, you know you can always just reload the most recent correct version of your spreadsheet. Once you've completed the task and saved the spreadsheet, go back to the video and pick up from where you left off. Okay then, I'm fairly sure this will be quite familiar to you. This is a spreadsheet we've been working on for the last couple of weeks, and this is the data that you were given in what we called the shoebox challenge. You were literally given a box with 100 bits of paper in it, and each bit of paper was the response from somebody who completed a survey for a shop. So you had a very unstructured bunch of survey responses. And what we done was we created this spreadsheet to structure the data so that we could work in it, so that we could start to draw conclusions from it and see patterns emerging in the data. That was very difficult to do when it was just a box of bits of paper, very unstructured, but now we've structured it so that we can start to work with it. So we've got a fair size of a spreadsheet here, actually. It goes right along to column AA, and it goes right the way down to row, if we go right to the very bottom, row 122. So it's a fairly hefty spreadsheet. Now this spreadsheet should be more or less identical to the one that you have on your computer. However, there's something that I haven't done that you should have done if you got to the end of the last task you were given. And that is cleaning the data. I haven't cleaned my data. I still have a couple of rows of information here, they're in red so you can see them, where some of the data was incorrect, or we felt that the recipient hadn't answered properly. And so we decided that that was a spoiled sheet. We couldn't use that data. So what you should have done is taken it out from your spreadsheet. I haven't done that, and I haven't done that on purpose because I want to show you something. Let's go down to some of the formulas that you typed in. You'll remember this because we typed in many formulas. If we go to this one here, we can see that 39 people who completed the survey said they were male. And we used the COUNTIF formula to do that. And what the COUNTIF formula does, if you can remember, is it counts the number of instances where, in this case, a number 1 appears in the range of cells starting at B3 and ending at B101. And in this case, there's 39 of them. But the important thing here is to look at this, the range of cells, B3 to B101. In other words, we told the computer to look at all the data above from B3 all the way down to B101 and look for the number of times a 1 appeared. That's obvious. If though I take away some of that data because it's spoiled, it's no good to us, then that you might think will cause a problem because the cells will no longer go down to cell 101. So let's see what happens, okay? So just remind ourselves again, we're going from B3 to B101. That's what we typed in. But now I'm going to delete one of these spoiled rows. Now to delete a row, you probably know this, it's very easy. Right click in the number to the very far left of the screen that denotes the row number. So right click on there and click delete. Now we've removed that row. We haven't just emptied the row, we've removed the row. The row no longer exists. So everything below that row has shunked up a little bit so that it tidies things up. Now let's have a little look at what's happened. We no longer have 39 males in the data set. We've only got 38 because that row that I deleted was a row where one person said, well, I'm a male. Well, we've taken him out the data set, so quite rightly the formula has recalculated it and said, well, in the existing data set there are now only 38 males. That's brilliant, that's what we want. And it done that because it knew, because we deleted one of those rows, it's no longer looking from B3 to B101. It now knows that it's just looking at the data between B3 and B100. So that's the power of Excel. You don't have to keep on recounting things and recalculating things. It will do it for you. So let's do another one. Again, I'm going to take out a row here where I can see the recipient was male. Again, we should see this drop down to 37, and when we check the formula after I've deleted this data, we should see that the formula has corrected itself to reflect the fact that a row has been taken out. So let's do that. We'll click on the 95 to the far left of the screen. That's the number that denotes that row, and we shall right click and delete. So 95 has been deleted, everything's moved up one place. Sure enough, we've now got 37 males rather than 38, and again, if we look at our formula, it's automatically corrected itself to look from B3 to B99. So that's us cleaning the data. We're taking out all the data that for some reason we have decided is spoiled information. It's spoiled data. It's not going to be helpful to us to keep it in the spreadsheet, because somewhere in their responses they've made a mistake. So I'm just continuing deleting all these red rows because these are the ones which are spoiled. Get rid of them. And we now know that as I'm doing this, the formula at the bottom of the page, all of the formulae will be recalculating themselves and sorting themselves out to reflect the fact that we've taken out this spoiled data. Okay, so we've cleaned our data, which is great, and we have a good structure to our data, apart from one thing. Now, the structure of your spreadsheet is all about how you've got it arranged and laid out on the screen, and ours is very well laid out. It's very neatly arranged, we can make sense of it, apart from one thing. We don't need column A, because column A was just simply a column we used to keep track of who in the class was typing in certain bits of information. So we can see here that in this case, row 3 down to row 12, these were all entered by Mason. So this is just our way of tracking who was doing what. We can see rows 13 down to rows 22, that was Samuel, entered that information, and Darren entered everything from row 23 down to 33. So this column here, it doesn't add anything to our data at all. It was purely a tool we used to keep track of where we were. Now, if we want to structure this data properly, and this is important, if we want to structure it properly, we don't want to have anything in there that we don't need. In the same way as when we cleaned the information and we took out those rows of data that were spoiled, we don't want to have columns in there that we just don't need, and we don't need that column. We don't need column A in this case. So to structure it properly, to make sure it's all nicely structured and it's just got the information we want, we've cleaned the data, but now let's make sure that we've also not got any columns that we don't want. So we're going to structure it properly, and again I'm just going to take away this column. We do it the same way as we did with the rows. Now, in the rows we went to the number on the far left, and we've seen that these numbers denote that particular row. So this is row 5, and it will go right the way across to the very far end of the spreadsheet. Sorry, that's row 6, not row 5. And similarly, if I click in A here, that's column A, and it goes right the way down, all the way down beyond our spreadsheet, right to the very bottom of the spreadsheet. It goes on forever and ever. Well, we want to get rid of this column here, okay? Now, it will mean that we also get rid of this little title thing here, but that's okay, we can work with that, okay? So, this is me making sure that the data is well structured, okay? It is well structured, the rest of the spreadsheet is very, very good indeed, but we don't need this column. So this is me structuring the data so that everything's hunky-dory. So if I right click in column A, and if I click delete, everything moves across. The old column A has gone, everything else is bunched across, it's stepped across one place to the left. but we still have all of our data, all of our titles and things in here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now we did lose that title here, so I'm just going to type it into this box here, age groups. Oh, beg your pardon, that's not age, that's gender. I'm just going to type it in here just so we still have it, so that we know what that this data here is all about. So that's us fully structured our data now. We've cleaned it, we've structured it, and we're good to go. We're good to start processing this data and create graphs and charts so we can start to draw conclusions. Okay, so now is a good time to pause the video and to go back to your own spreadsheet. Check that you've removed all of the rows of spoiled data from your spreadsheet, and also check that you've removed any columns from the structure of the spreadsheet that are not required. Now, I would anticipate that it's just going to be column A you have to remove, if indeed you have to still remove it. You may have done this before. So yeah, if you've got column A there and it contains students' names, or it has something like respondent 1, respondent 2, respondent 3, things like that, you can take that column away. And also any rows of spoiled data, make sure that's all gone too. So go and do that now, then come back and restart the video. Okay, so our spreadsheet is clean and the structure is good. What we're going to do now is to start looking at something that is a feature of our spreadsheet which we've never looked at before, and it's called filtering. So let's take a column at random. Let's go for column E. Column E here is the age group from the age 16 to 25 years, and we can see that wherever there's a 1, that means that particular person said they were that particular age, they were in that age group. And we can see down here our formula tells us there's 20 of them. Now that's great, but just say you wanted to know the survey results of only that age group. You weren't interested in anybody who was age 26 to 35 or 36 to 45. You wanted just to see the survey results from the people in the age group age 16 to 25 years. The filter allows us to do that, and the filter can be found by clicking this wee arrow here. Now this is something that appeared automatically in the spreadsheet, the way we set the spreadsheet up. At this level, don't worry too much about how it appeared there, just take it as read that it did, okay? You've been provided with these filters. If I open up this arrow, it gives me a bunch of different things I can do here, a bunch of different filters, okay? And I'm going to play with the filters rather than this thing up here which is called sorting. We're going to look at that next. But for the minute, I'm going to concentrate on filters because this is the one that, for us, is probably most useful. Now at the minute, what the filter has got is a tick in every box. Now these boxes, there are 4 boxes here, they represent all the things that the spreadsheet can see in this column. The cell either contains the number 1, or it contains the expression age 16 to 25, or it contains blanks. Now we can choose which of those cells we want it to show us. So if I say, well, don't show us the blank cells, okay, just show us everything that's got a number 1 in it, and also the age 16 to 25, that's the label at the top. You can see it, well, you'll see it in a second. That's the label at the top of the column. If we just put a tick in both those boxes, so we've not got a tick in the blanks, and we click OK, what happens is it removes all the cells with blanks in them. So we can now see all 20 people where there's a 1 in the box for the age 16 to 25. I hope that makes sense, okay? So we've filtered it. We've taken away everything we don't want. We just wanted to see the people who had put a tick in the box to say they were aged between 16 and 25, and this is them there. So now we're looking purely at their survey results. So we can see what their comments were, we can see what they thought of the friendliness and the helpfulness of staff, we can see how likely they were to recommend the shop to other people. So we can focus just on that particular group if we want to. Okay, let's try a different one. So let's take that filter away. Let's just say, well, select all. Okay, so we're back to seeing the whole spreadsheet again, and let's filter friendliness. let's see how many people said that the people were extremely friendly in the shop. So if we click on the select all, we can either select all or deselect all, and I want to just see the people who gave it a 5. That was very friendly. But also I'll tick this thing here because that's just the title in the top of the column. That's all that is. Okay, so now what's happened is we've filtered it so that in the friendliness column we've only got 5s. Okay, so we can see who all gave a friendliness score of 5, and we can't see any pattern here amongst the age. People from all different ages gave them a score of 5. People of all different genders gave them a score of 5. There's no real pattern we can see there. But by filtering, it allows us to start to see things a little bit more easily. Okay, so I'll just set all that back so it's showing us everything, so we've got all the data there again. Let's go for, oh, I don't know, let's go for gender. Let's see how many people chose to opt out, chose not to tell us what the gender was. So again, let's get rid of the blank ones. We just want to see the boxes where they tick that. So we've got where a number 1 appears, we've got a tick in there, and we've got the title, keep that there. And we can see that the opt-outs, there's all the people that opted out. There's 14 of them, it tells us that in this formula here. And we can see them all there. And again, we can see that the people who opted out weren't from a particular age group, they're from all different age groups. So we can see there's a nice spread there. Again, we can see that the people who opted out, there's no reason why there would be a connection here, but they didn't come from a particular group that only spent a certain amount of money. They're spread across all groups. So that's quite good. We can start to see patterns emerging, and this is a very effective way of seeing some simple patterns starting to emerge. So that is filtering. Okay, every column has a filter arrow above it. Where we have applied the filter, it's got this slightly different icon from what it does here. The drop arrow's gone now, and we've got this filter thing here. So let's just switch everything back on, so we're seeing everything that's in that column. So that's us back to seeing the full data set for everything. But every single column has the ability to filter it. Let's see how many people, or let's just see the data for the people who ticked the box for being age 55, and we'll keep the title on again. That's what that is. There you go. There's 9 of them. There's the 9, and oh look, there seems to be a wee correlation here. People who were aged 55 and over tended to spend more when they're in the shop. There's only one of them spent between £1 and £10. Most of them are up here. That's quite an interesting wee correlation we can see there. But yeah, that's what filtering is. Filtering allows you to filter out the stuff that you don't want in a particular column so that you can see just a certain selection of that data from that particular column and how that ripples through all of the other rows, so you can see what they responded to in this particular case, what their responses were. Hope that makes sense. What I'd like to do now is to pause the video and go and play with some of those filters and see if you can get it to behave the way mine has done here, and then when you're ready, come back and restart the video. Okay, so that's filtering, and if you follow the instruction on the splash screen that popped up there, you should be left with this screen here. And what this screen shows us is that there were 2 males who spend on average more than £80 when they're in the shop, and by filtering the way we have, we can see that coincidentally both of those chaps were in the age 36 to 45 years age group, and we can also see how they scored for friendliness and helpfulness and likelihood to recommend. Basically, we've narrowed down, we've filtered out everything else, so we've just got the responses from those 2 chaps. So that's how filtering can be quite useful. We're going to move on now though. Make sure you're aware of how that works. If you're not very sure, you can always step back in the video and look at that bit again, watch that section of the video again. But what I'm going to do is set everything back to normal, so we've got all of our data showing again, because we're going to look now at sorting. Now sorting is just a way of arranging the data in this case, numerical order. So if I select, let's just say I select column O here, you can see it goes 3, 4, 4, 4, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3. What I'm going to do is sort these into numerical order, going from the smallest to the largest. It's not really going to serve any purpose for us in this particular example. All I'm going to do is show you how you go about doing it. So if I was to drop down this arrow again, open up this menu, we were previously playing with the filters, but what we're going to do now is going to look at the top and we're going to sort it smallest to largest. Okay? So if I click this one at the top, sort smallest to largest, what it will do is it will take everything in column O and arrange it in numerical order, starting at number 1 because that's the lowest number we have, right up to number 5 because that's the highest number we have. Let's click that and see what happens. So I've clicked it and there you go. Column O, because that's the one we selected, you can see it's had some action done to it because the icon's changed again. There's all the ones, then you've got all the 2s, then you get all the 3s. So they're all now in numerical order. We've sorted it from the smallest number to the highest number. But what you might have noticed is that also we've lost our heading. And that's because what it's done is it's also sorted that and it's put that down at the end here, which isn't the most helpful thing in the world. Again though, for the purposes of what we're doing, this isn't really a particularly useful thing to be able to do. However, it is something you need to know how to do because in the final assessment you may be asked to demonstrate that you can sort data into order. It might be from the smallest to the largest, or it could be the largest to the smallest. Okay, so I've now organized that one from the largest to the smallest. Okay, so now it starts, it's put the friendliness back at the top, and there's all the 5s, and then there's all the 4s. So we're just changing things around a bit. Now what's important to remember is this: it hasn't only changed the order of the numbers in this column. It knows that this 5, for example, is part of a data set that is all within this row here. Okay, this one row represents the responses of one respondent. So it didn't just change these about. What it done was it made sure that any related information that was in this row has also been changed about. So to prove that to you, what we're going to do is I'm going to change this again from being large to small back to being small to large. And I want you to watch what happens here. Okay, just watch what happens here, because to prove my point, these will change. These will also shift about. So we're currently largest to smallest. I'm going to go smallest to largest, and you can see how these have changed to reflect that change. And it shows that it's moving the entire row. It's not just moving that one column, it's moving the entire, all the rows up and down to fit. So that is how we go about sorting data. Now remember, all these changes we're making will not make any difference to these formulas down here, because these formulas are doing specific things with the data in the columns above. Okay, so none of this information here will have changed. Okay, so that's sorting data. Make sure you're clear on how that works. You can do that to any column at all. We've chosen to play with column O, but you can basically do it on any column here. You could even do it to column Z here. Okay, if we sort this A to Z, it will put them all in alphabetical order. Okay, so this is all in alphabetical order. Yeah, you can see that there. Okay, so you're going to pause the video again in a second or two, and you're going to have a go at sorting things using that wee technique. Drop down the arrow at the top and then choose whether you want that column to be sorted smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Okay, so by now your spreadsheet is going to look very different from mine. You've sorted a selection of different columns, and therefore your numbers will be in different places than mine, your headings will be in a different place than mine, basically the whole thing looks a bit of a mess. So what we want to do before we go into the next bit is to get it back to a state where we're all looking at the same thing. So we're going to do a bunch of undos to take us back to the state where we were before we started all this sorting. Now, there's a very easy way to do this. You could just go up and click the undo button a bunch of times. However, there's an easier way. If you drop down this button here, if you open up this menu, you can see all the different things we can undo are listed here in order. So each time we click the undo button, we go backwards through this system of, or through this sequence of changes that we've made over time. So you can see all the different sorting I've done, you can see all the different filtering steps that I've done, you can see how I typed in gender at the very start of this video. There's lots of different things that I've done here, and we can step back through those. And the easiest way to do it really is to say, well, do you know what? Let's just get rid of all the sorting. So if we go up and we click on that wee arrow, click on here, that takes us back to exactly where we were before we started doing all that sorting. So the spreadsheet now looks exactly the way it did when we had just finished the bit with all the filtering. So do that now so that your spreadsheet looks the same as it does here on my screen. Okay, so we're doing quite well. We have our spreadsheet set up, we've cleaned it of all the spoiled data, we've sorted out the structure by removing that column at the start that we didn't really want. We've looked at how to filter information, to look at things in more depth, and we've also looked at how to sort information into some kind of order, whether it's smallest to largest, largest to smallest, or even in alphabetical order. And that's all very well. The next thing we're going to move on to is to look at how we can use this information to create graphs and charts. But we're not actually going to use information in this main bit of the spreadsheet. What we're going to do is we're going to use the information down here. The whole reason for putting all these formulae in was so that we could use this information to create graphs and charts. Now that's great. But we've got this huge amount of information up here that at the minute we just don't want to really look at again. Okay, we don't need to look at it. We can't delete it because obviously this information here is what generates this information here. So we can't delete it, but it'd be lovely to hide it. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to set up a group that contains all of these cells, all of these rows from row 1 right down to row 91, I think it is. Yep, 91. We're going to put that into a group and then hide that group. So it'll still be there, it's just tucked away, hidden, out of sight, out of mind, and that allows us to concentrate on this stuff here. So let's look at how we do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the rows that I want to put in the group. So do it again, row 1, click and drag all the way down to, in my case, it's row 91. Now it might be slightly different on your spreadsheet. You might have 92 rows, only 90 rows. It just depends on how many rows you took out because you thought it was spoiled data. If it's slightly different, don't worry too much. However, mine goes from row 1 to row 91. So I want to make this into one big group so I can hide the whole lot with one click, and here's how you do it. It's very easy. I've selected all the rows. I'm going to go up to here and click on the word data, and it opens up this data menu. Okay, click on the data tab, opens up the data menu, and over here we've got the word group. So if I click it, watch what happens at the left hand side of the screen. Click. Can you see that this bar has appeared with a minus sign at the bottom? Okay, and that bar goes all the way from row 1 right the way down to row 91. It's the group that I selected. When I clicked on group, it put it into a group. It's all now dealt with as though it's one thing. And if I click the minus sign, it hides it. It's still there, it's just tucked away, out of sight, out of mind. If I want to see it again, I can click on the plus sign, and there we go. Perfect. Hide it again by clicking on the minus sign. Now the good thing is it means that we're left with just this information here. All that data that we've hidden, it's still there, it's still active if you like, it's still generating all of this information, but it's hidden. We don't have to worry about it because we're just now going to concentrate on this bit here. So that's great, we can now group things and hide things. Let's show you how to ungroup it. As you can imagine, it's pretty much the reverse process. Let's first of all have a look at the group. There it's there. Now, I've just clicked again just to deselect it all. If I want to get rid of this group, make it no longer all one group, just do the same thing. Click and drag to select all the rows that are in the group. That's it there. And then in the Data tab, click on Ungroup. And you'll notice that that line has gone away. Okay? So we still have all information there. It's just no longer treated as one group. I can't hide it all just with one click now. There are other ways to hide it, but really grouping is the way you want to go. So I'm going to group it again and hide it again because the next thing I'm going to move on to is creating graphs and charts. So we don't need to see all this stuff. We just want to see this stuff here. So let me go ahead and group it. Watch closely because you're about to do this. Click on the one, drag all the way down to row 91. Again, as I say, that's in my case. There you go, row 91. Make sure in the Data tab, click on Group, and then click on that minus sign. And that's it hidden. Okay, pause the video and have a go at that yourselves. So we're at the point now where we're going to start using the information here to create some graphs and charts, and that'll helpfully make it easier for us to understand the information that we've gathered. So let's start with a nice simple one. We're going to start by creating a pie chart of the genders of all the people who were involved in completing the survey. So it's very easy to do. What we're going to do is we're going to use this data here because this is the data relating to people's gender. If we click in A95 and drag down to D96, we're going to use this data here. Now remember, you might have slightly different rows and columns. Don't worry too much about that as long as you're selecting the correct data. So selected that data by clicking and dragging, and very simply, because it is very easy to use graphs and charts in Excel, I'm going to go up to Insert, and then I'm going to have a pie chart. If I drop down the arrow there, I can choose a number of different styles of pie chart. You can choose any one you want, but I'm just going to go for the simple, straightforward one. So click on that one, and there's my pie chart. Now you can see here, the pie chart's included, and it also has included male, female, opt-out, and other. And it's got those because we selected those when we selected the data we wanted to use to build the pie chart. Now that's brilliant. But it's not quite got enough information for us yet to work out what these numbers are. We can see that the biggest proportion of people who completed the survey were males. We can see the next biggest were the females, then we had the opt-outs and people who declared themselves as being something other than male, female, or chose not to tell us. That's the smallest section of the people who completed the survey. However, we can tell the pie chart to give us a bit more information, and we can do that up here. Now, because we've inserted the chart, it's automatically opened up this menu up here, okay? And we can tell it how we want it to lay out the chart. So, if we drop down that arrow, it opens up this menu here, and we can see by floating our mouse over the different options, we get the different formats for the pie chart. Now the one I think I would like to go for is this one here, because if I click it, it tells you what the title of each section is and how many people are in that section. But what it doesn't have, and this is crucial, is a title to tell us what this is a pie chart of. Well, that's okay because we can add that element. So if we go up to this section, we can drop down the arrow here and say give me a chart title, and let's have it above the chart. We could have a centered overlay, but we'll go for above the chart. Doesn't really matter too much. Click above chart, and then click in the box, and we can start to type what we'll call it. So we shall call it genders of people completing the survey. can see a wee spelling mistake there. In fact, there's a couple, so let's go back and correct those. There you go, genders of people completing the survey. And that's it. Now that's great, we've got the chart there, and it's on this sheet here, but it'd be much better if this was on its own sheet. Now you'll remember this from a previous exercise we've done. You can have numerous sheets in the one spreadsheet. So there's an easy way to move this onto a new sheet of its own, and it's up here, Move Chart. If we click on Move Chart, we can put it in a new sheet and we can give it a title. Gender Pie Chart. Click on OK, and you can see there what it's done is it's moved it onto a whole new sheet called Gender Pie Chart, as we asked it to, and there is the pie chart there. And we can see right away this is gender of people completing the survey. We can see there's 37 males, there's 30 females, there's 14 people who opted out, and 9 people who were something other than those 3 things. So there you go, that's a really simple way of generating a pie chart. Very effective, very visual, it's very easy to see what's going on with the data that we've got there. Now our information is still all here, it's in sheet 1. There you go, so we can just go back to here. I'm curious, what's this one? That's obviously something I've been doing earlier. We'll just delete that one. There you go. We've got sheet 1. Here's all our data, and this is the data we've just used. So I'll just show you that one more time, just so you're really clear on what happened. Select the data, including the titles if you can, that you are wanting to create a graph from. Insert. In this case we chose pie chart. Let's go for a different format. Let's go for that one. Okay, and then what we had to do was we had to decide on what layout we preferred. Let's think. Yeah, we'll go with the same one because I quite like that one. So that was up here in layout, and then we'll add a chart element and a title above the chart, and we'll give this a different title. It's the same data, but we'll give it a different title just to be interesting. Respondents genders. Okay, and then we shall move that into a new sheet, and we'll call it the same as we've called the chart. Respondents genders. There you go. So there's the gender pie chart we created first. Respondents genders, the same data, just presented in a slightly different way. I quite like that actually. And then sheet 1 is the data that we've been using. So have a go at that yourself, pause the video, have a go, and come back when you've done that. So we now have a nice pie chart of the genders of the respondents who were involved in completing the survey. And that's great, that's a good start. Let's now create a graph of the people according to their different age groups. Okay, we've done a pie chart, so let's do a different kind. Let's do a bar graph, or a column graph as it's called in Microsoft Excel. Microsoft is an American company, so they tend to use American terminology for things, so they call this a column chart. Okay, we call it a bar graph. So it's very much the same process, but there is one thing to watch out for. So let's just have a go and see what happens. I want to create a graph of this information here. I want to create a graph using the age categories and the data under each of those categories, the number of people in each of those age groups. So like I did with the pie chart, I've just clicked, in this case in E95, and I've dragged down to I97, and that's gathered up all that data. It has though included this empty space here. Now let's see if that creates a wee problem. So if I go to Insert, and if I click on Column Chart or Bar Chart, and I'll just go for the first one, it looks really good. We have got an effective bar chart or a column chart. But the problem is, it refers to two different series of information, Series 1 and Series 2. Now Series 2 are the orange bars, and Series 1 are the blue bars, but there are no blue bars. And that's because the software Excel has assumed that we want to graph the information in these cells. The information in these cells is 0, which is why nothing shows up. But it shows us that there is something there which is at 0. That's why we can't see anything, but it's included it. So this isn't perfect, this isn't ideal. It throws the graph off a little bit, although the orange graphs are right and they do correctly graph the information we have here. It's just not quite right because it's included this extra series of information. What we need to do then is select the information so that we don't select this empty space, and it's actually very straightforward. So what we'll do first of all is we'll just delete that graph because it was wrong. And what we'll do is we shall start again, but listen carefully. What I'm going to do is select the age categories, but rather than selecting and dragging down, because that includes that space, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those cells, then press and hold the control key and select those cells. The control key, by holding that, you've told the computer I want to select the first set and the second set, but nothing in between. Okay, so that was the control key that allowed that to happen. Select the first set of cells, hold in the control key, select the second set of cells, then release the control key. If I now go up to Insert and a column chart, and I'll just pick the same one again, the first one, we can see now that there is no reference to a second data series, okay? Because there isn't. All it's done is it's taken these headings, which is put at the bottom of each chart, of each bar, I beg your pardon, and then it's used this information here to work out the height of each of the bars. It has completely disregarded this empty space because by using the control key we told it ignore what's in there. We're not interested, we just want to control what we're graphing. We want to graph that, and we've got control of it by using the control key. Okay, so this is pretty good. Now with the pie chart, you'll remember we went up to quick layout and we were able to add various bits and pieces to the pie chart, and you can do the same here. So we should always have, for every title, for every graph or chart, we should always have a title. That's crucial. I'm just going to click this one here. We should always have a title, and we should also have an axis title here and an axis title here. Without this information, the graph really makes no sense at all because nobody knows what it is. So, quick layout, and for me it was this layout here, layout 9. Okay? There are other ways of doing this. Okay, let's just go back to the basics here. There's another way. I've taken away the axis labels, but the chart title's still there. We could also click this plus sign, because we can also add axis titles here by highlighting that box there. There's loads of stuff we can add. Okay, whichever way you want to do it is fine. You can either go for the plus sign or you can go up here and go for quick layout. The end result is the same. We now have a bar graph or a column chart that has a chart title, an axis title and an axis title. Now we should change these obviously to make sense. But to make it easier for myself, what I'll do first is I'm going to move this chart onto its own sheet. Now this is going to be a chart of the number of people in different age groups within the survey. So we'll give it a chart, a sheet rather, of that name. So I'll click Move Chart onto a new sheet and we'll call it Ages of People Involved in the Survey. Oh, sounds like that's too long a title. We'll just put Ages of People Involved then. Okay, so that's what the sheet's called, Ages of People Involved. And now we'll give this suitable titles. So, Ages of People Involved in the Survey. Okay, there's another typo, I'm just not very good at typing, sorry about that. That's that one there, and if we click here, we shall call this number of people in each age group. That's that one. Now you notice that I'm doing this slightly differently than I did in the pie chart. In the pie chart I double clicked and started to type. In this one I'm just clicking once and then going up to the formula bar here and typing it in. Either way will work. Okay, we'll call this age groups. You should really give it capital letters if you want to be strictly correct about it. Age groups. So there you go, we have got our sheet of data and we have created, remember we created 2 pie charts for the genders, and we've now got a column chart or a bar graph of the ages of the people involved. So we can start to see kind of patterns emerging. There were more males than females involved in the survey. Although of course there was 14 people who chose not to tell us what their gender was and 9 who felt there was something other than those 3. In the ages we can see that most people, or the larger number of people who responded, there was 21 people who were in the age group 46 to 55. The smallest age group was the 55 plus. So we're starting to see things much more easily now because we've got graphs and charts rather than just this huge amount of data. Now if you can remember there, what I've done is I've just revealed that group of rows that I'd hidden earlier when I created this group. So let's just hide it again. There you go. Okay, so I'm sure you'll agree, graphs and charts make it much easier to understand what's going on. So I'll show you that again just so you're clear on what happened, because you're about to do this yourself. You're going to create a column chart or a bar graph of the age groups of people who completed the survey. So we started by selecting the age group cells, then holding down the control key and then selecting the data underneath each of those age group cells. The control key meant that we didn't select the space because we know now that caused problems. Spaces do cause problems when you're trying to create graphs and charts. Went up to insert, went to this icon here for a column chart. I went for the first one because it's nice and simple. Then what I done was I went up here and went for layout 9. Because layout 9 gives us a chart title and some axis titles. I moved it onto its own sheet. Let's just call that, I called it ages of people. I'll just call it respondents ages this time. I hope that's okay. Respondents ages, that's the name of the sheet that's going to go onto. And then I can change these titles, and again there's a couple of ways you can do this. It really doesn't matter which way you do it. Ages of people responding to survey. Oh, almost. Okay, that'll do for that one. And down here we shall call this oh, no idea what I've done there. We shall call this number of people in the age group. There you go. And oh, Bumber. Well, let's not call it that. Yeah, good idea to check your spelling. And down here we shall, I've done it again. Down here we'll click on this axis title, just get rid of it, and we'll just call this age groups. So very straightforward to create a nice looking graph in Excel. There you go, you can see they're exactly the same. Okay, apart from I'll just give them slightly different titles and things. But there you go, that's what I'd like to do now, is to use this data to create a bar graph. Pause the video and do that now. Okay then, we're doing fine. We've got a couple of pie charts of the genders of people who responded to the survey, and we've got a couple of bar graphs of the ages of people who responded to the survey. So let's create a line graph of the amount of money that people on average spend when they visit the shop. So we're going to be using this data up here, and again we can see we've got a space in the middle, so we're going to have to remember that wee control key trick so that we control what we select. We don't want the computer just to select all of this stuff. So it's very straightforward. We've done it before, let's do it again. We will select this information here, this is the titles, hold in the control key and select the data which is associated with these particular titles. Excellent. So we go to insert, and this time we'll go for a line graph, which is this one here. And again, we've got lots of different options of how we can make it look, but let's just go for the first one. It tends to be easier. And there's a line graph, nice and simple. Again though, every graph should have titles wherever possible. We have a chart title here, but we could really do with an axis title here and an axis title there. So again, we'll go up to quick layout and we'll find one that has them all. There you go, that one there. Now this is layout number, what was that? 10, I think it said, layout 10. Click on that, we have a chart title, an axis title and an axis title, which is great. So let's move it onto its own sheet again. We'll move it, and this time we'll call this sheet average amount spent, I think. So a new sheet called average amount spent. Never yet typed one correctly, have I? Okay, so it's created a new sheet with a graph on it, and we want to change these titles. So again, we'll call this average amount spent. Heavens above, really must learn to type. Down here we'll put let's think, we'll call it spending bracket. Okay, and up here we'll call this one, I keep doing that because I keep double clicking, we shall call this one, let's think, number of people spending in each bracket. Hope that makes sense to you. Spending in each bracket. There you go. Really must learn to type. Brilliant. So we have our line graph. We can see that in the £1 to £10 spending bracket, we've got just under 10 people spend that amount on average when they visit a shop. The number of people who spend between £11 and £30 goes up to 25, but most people generally spend between £31 and £50. Now it looks like it's a straight line sloping down here. It's just off the straight actually, but it doesn't matter. The point is, the trend is that most people spend 31 to 50, and then less people spend 51 to 80, and even less people spend more than £80 on average when they visit the shop. So this is quite a nice wee line graph that's quite useful, I suppose. We could equally have created a pie chart or a bar graph. We've created a line graph, I suppose, because what we're graphing is the same thing, just by breaking it up into different groupings, I suppose. So it's perhaps not an ideal graph, but it's just to demonstrate how you could use a line graph as well, or how you can create a line graph. So very easy. So I won't show you that one again. I'm sure you're getting the idea now. Select the titles of each spending bracket, and then hold in the control key, select the data underneath each of those spending brackets, go up to insert, click on the line graph, and Bob's your uncle. Remember to put it onto its own sheet with an appropriate name, and remember to give it a chart title and axis titles as well. Pause the video and on you go. Okay, so this next graph is one that you've probably never created before. We're going to create a scatter plot. A scatter plot of the friendliness of the staff against the helpfulness of the staff. We want to find out if there's a correlation between how friendly somebody is and how helpful they are. Now we can't do this from this summarized data. We need to go back to the main body of data that we've now hidden in a group. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that group that's hidden above here. And if you can remember, if you click on this wee plus sign, it will open up that group of data. There you go, and there's that information there. So we've opened up all that data that we had hidden in that group earlier on. And this is a good reason for using groups. It means we can very easily hide and unhide the data. So we can't create the graph we're about to create just using the summary down here. We need to actually get access to all this data. We've done that, so let's crack on. We want to create a graph of the friendliness of staff against the helpfulness of the staff. So I'm going to select all that data. Okay, I've selected the titles, friendliness and helpfulness, and I've selected the data that goes with them as well. And as you'd expect, I'm going to insert a graph. insert, and this time we want to select this one. This is a scatter graph. If we click on it, there's a couple of different options, but again I'm just going to go for the first one because it tends to be easier. And there we go, we have a very simple scatter graph, or a scatter plot. Now, to explain what this does, this looks for correlations and patterns between these two different data sets. Now, the friendliness, which is in column O here, okay, that is plotted along the x-axis along here. And the helpfulness is plotted up the y-axis. And what this graph looks for is patterns to see how things correlate, how things compare to each other. Now at the minute it looks like a fairly random scattering. There appears to be something of a pattern in here. We can see what that pattern is like if we click on the graph and then click on the plus, and we'll ask for the trend line. And there you go. We can see what we know is called a positive correlation, where friendliness along the x-axis is going up, the numbers are getting higher, then helpfulness is also going up. And that makes sense. The friendlier somebody is, the more helpful they're likely to be. So this graph works. This graph kind of shows us what we expected to see, and it shows this positive correlation between friendliness of staff and the helpfulness of staff. So let's put it onto its own sheet as we have done with all the other graphs, and let's give it something more of some labels which will make things a bit easier for people to understand. So first thing is, move the chart onto a new sheet, and we shall call this one, I think, friendliness versus helpfulness. There you go. So there's that graph on this sheet. And let's see what layouts we can have here, because we really would like to put some additional labeling and things in here so that we can see how it, that's not too bad, so we can start to add labels to make it make more sense. Now like we said, friendliness is along the bottom, and I can tell you that because whenever you select two columns of data, the column that is on the left side of the two goes along the bottom of the graph, and the column that is to the right side of the two goes up the y-axis. So I'm going to call these friendliness along the x-axis and helpfulness along the y-axis, or up the y-axis. Okay. Now we don't have a chart title, so let's see if we can add one. Let's do, and we'll just call it scatter plot comparing friendliness against helpfulness. Plut, there you go. Scatter plot comparing friendliness against helpfulness. And we can see that there is a positive correlation there. Now, this is a good thing. We'd expect that result. When people are friendly, they tend to be more helpful, and vice versa. It's not a very tight correlation. We have got a bit of scattering going on round about here. So that suggests it's not perfect. It's not a very, very tight correlation, but there is this positive correlation there. We can see that as one quality, friendliness, increases, so does helpfulness. So it's been successful, and it's proven to us that that is the case. That is the experience of people visiting this shop. They think that people who are helpful are also friendly. So there you go, that's a scatter plot. So I'll go back and show you that again, because in a few seconds you're just about to try that one for yourself. Let's go back to sheet 1. Now if you remember, the first thing I done was I had to reveal my hidden group. So there you go, I've just hidden it again. So to reveal your hidden group, what you need to do is go across and click on this plus sign here. That reveals all the data that we'd previously put into group and hidden. You're then going to select column O and column P, and you're going to select all the data in there. You're going to insert a scatter graph, click the first one, move it onto its own chart. I won't bother giving it a title, but you can. And then you are going to pick a layout which includes, let's think, I think I went for that one. No, I didn't. Well, maybe I did, I can't remember. But you're going to pick one that meets your needs. That's quite a nice one there, the first one. Okay, and you're going to give it a suitable axis title on the vertical axis. Now remember, that will be whatever the title of the right hand column of data was, and your x-axis on the bottom here will be the title of whatever the left hand column of data was. And then give it a title just to explain what the graph's all about. And to show the trend line, click the plus sign and click on trend line. And there you go. That's how to create and insert a scatter plot into your spreadsheet. Pause the video and have a go at that now. Okay, so we're very nearly there, to be honest with you. You hopefully have created this scatter plot or scatter graph comparing friendliness against helpfulness, and you've put that on its own sheet and it's all looking hunky-dory and tickety-boo. What I'd like to do now then is just create perhaps one or two more graphs, just so we've got a full picture of what's going on. And I think what I'd like to do is create a graph or a chart which describes how important people feel each of these items would be to include in the list of stock, the stock that the shop has. And I think the best way to do that really would be a nice neat pie chart. So let's create a pie chart of all the number one responses, the people who felt that these things were at the top of their list of importance. So who felt CDs were most important, who felt DVDs were most important, etc, etc. So it's very straightforward. Let's have a go at that just now then. So what we'll do is we shall select these titles here, CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, vinyl LPs, etc. And we'll go for the number one responses. So remember, we need to use this control key to select this row here, I beg your pardon. If we didn't use the control key, here's what would happen. I'll select these titles and then I'll try to select the number one responses, and what it does is it's let go the titles. So okay, let's try this then. Let's grab the titles and we'll press the shift key and we'll try to grab the number one responses. And what the shift key does is it says include the first things you selected and the last things and everything in between. Well, that's no good to us. We need much more control than that, and that's why I keep saying the word control. Okay, select the titles, use the control key so we can control what we're selecting, and then select all the scores, if you like, for the number one responses. Okay, go up to insert, let's have a pie chart, just go for the nice simple one. There you go. Now, as with all the other charts, we shall move them onto its own sheet, and we will call this the most popular items. I can't type at all really, can I? People would like. Oh, of course I can't type such a long thing in. Let's just go for the most popular items then, and that will go into a new sheet. There you go. So the most popular items, that will do fine. Quick layout, let's pick one that kind of we like the look of, that gives us as much information as possible. That's not too bad. Let's go for that one though, because this one lists the item and the number of responses. Doesn't have a title, so let's give it a title. And we'll go for above the chart, just because I like it. And let's put people's number one item on their wish list. Not the best title in the world, but it'll do fine. It tells us what this pie chart is. So we've created a pie chart of the number one item that people would like to see the shop stocking. What's a P3? I can't even remember what that is. Let's go and find out. A P3? No idea what that is. That's obviously just been something that I've changed for some random reason to say P3. Well, okay, let's just correct that then. It says bulb, fuses, plugs, etc. So let's change that to just bulbs, etc. It was P3, it's now bulbs, etc. Let's see if that's done anything to our pie chart. There you go. It's replaced the P3 title that was in the pie chart with the new title I've just typed in. And that's an important point that I've not made yet. Any changes you now make to this data here anywhere on this sheet will be reflected in the relevant graphs that you've created as well. It's the great thing about spreadsheets. They're always updating themselves. They're always recalculating themselves. So you don't have to do the work. You let the spreadsheet do the work for you. All you've got to do is enter the data. So there you go. That's people's number one item on their wish list. And just for fun, let's see what their least popular items were. We'll do exactly the same thing. We'll select the titles again. We'll hold in the control key, so we're controlling what we're selecting. We'll select those. We shall go up to insert. Let's go for a pie chart again. I just like pie charts. We'll go for this one. Why not? Go for a pie chart. We'll move that chart into its own page and we'll call it least popular items. There you go. My typing, I would like to say, is getting better, but it's just really not. Least popular items. There you go. It's on its own sheet, which is lovely. It makes it much easier to see. And again, we will select a layout that we like. Let's just go for the same one again. I really like that because it tells us the numbers and the actual item. Gives us a label for each section. Now, I'm quite interested that Blu-rays here, I think it's the largest section in this pie chart. 17 people felt that they just didn't want Blu-rays. And that kind of makes sense because if we go back to most popular items, nobody wanted it as the most popular item. I wonder if Blu-rays are just falling out of popularity right now. I just don't know. Anyhow, all it's missing now is to add this title. So let's add a chart element. And remember, you could do it from the plus sign as well. You could add a chart title here. There's a few different ways you can do these things. And we'll call this, I can't remember what we called the last one, so we'll just call it least popular wish list item. That's close enough for rock and roll. So there you go. A couple of pie charts just so we can start to see very clearly what it is that people would like the shop to stock and what they really wouldn't like the shop to stock. And we could go on and create pie charts for all of these things here, but I think for the minute 2 is enough. That gives us an idea of how to go about doing it. So as you've probably guessed, what I'd like you to do now is to go ahead and create 2 pie charts. One for the most popular items, the number 1 responses, and one for the items that people would least like to see the shop stocking. Pause the video. Okay, so that's just about us. We've now created quite a number of graphs. We can go back and look through the graphs and get a real picture of how things are performing in the shop, how things are doing, any changes we need to make. But there's one thing that's bothering me, and I'm going to go back to this scatter plot. Okay? Now this scatter plot shows, as we explained earlier on, there's a real positive correlation between how friendly somebody is, a staff member, and how helpful they are. And that's really good. But there is this scattering of things here, and there are some points that are quite low here. And I think this deserves to be looked into a little bit more. So, let's have a quick look at what we could do here. What we can do is we can look at, this is the staff quality section here, okay? And we know that if somebody gave it a score of 1, that means they're terrible. Well, we can see that 7 people gave it a score of 1. 7 people think friendliness is terrible. 14 people think it's excellent. That's what a 5 means. So 14 people think it's excellent. But the majority of people are somewhere about here, giving it a score of 2, 3 or 4. Now that's quite easy to see just by looking at the figures here. But let's try and put that into a graph. We might as well. We've done everything else as a graph, so let's do the same thing, okay? So we'll select this information. Now I'm not having to use a control key because this information is side by side. I can just click on there, drag down to here, and that's it. That's the data selected. Now we could do this in a number of different ways. We could do it as a pie chart, we could do it as a column, we could do it as a bar graph, we could do anything you want really. Not a line graph though, because these things, they're not connected, okay? What one person thinks is in no way connected to what somebody else thinks. So let's go for, I don't know, I'm going to go for one of these because we haven't done this yet, okay? Let's go for a radar chart because I quite like these. So click on this. There's my radar chart. I'll talk to that in a wee second. But what I'm going to do, as you probably expect, is to put it onto its own sheet. So we'll move it and we'll put it into a new sheet and we'll call it this was staff, what was this one called actually? This was staff friendliness, okay? So new sheet called staff friendliness. We just want to be able to see how friendly people think the staff are. We know there's that correlation between friendliness and helpfulness, but let's have a look and see what our customers actually think. Now there's a couple of things here. To read this radar graph, here's 0 in the middle, means nobody gave that a score there. This is 5 people, 10 people, 15 people, and so on. And 7 people gave it a number 1 response. We can see that somewhere out here, this is almost at the 25 line, so somewhere out here, if we float our mouse over it, actually tells us it's 24. 24 people gave it a number 2 response. We float our mouse over this point, we can see 20 people said a number 3 response. So we've got quite a visual thing here that very few people thought it was terrible, which is a number 1 response. But equally, not all that many people thought it was brilliant. Not all that many people thought it was excellent. Only 14 people did. Now, this graph's great. It's quite a nice visual way of looking at things. There's other ways you could do it, but let's just go with this just now. What I don't like, though, is these titles here. Okay? Now, they're here because if we go back to the sheet, that's what we selected, and that's great. And it's because on the original survey paper, it was how many people ticked box number 1, how many people ticked box number 2, etc., etc. But what we've said up here is that 1 means it's terrible, and 5 means it's excellent, and 3 means it's fair. So let's change these titles, okay? 1 is terrible, 3 is fair, and 5 is excellent. Okay, let's go for that. Now obviously these titles just count for these things here, okay? We've used these titles to go right along these rows, but we're not saying that people thought that the idea of stocking CDs was a terrible idea, because in these ones, this number 1 here was actually meant it was their favourite idea, their most popular thing. So we've changed them just for the purposes of this graph here. Hope that makes sense to you, okay? So between terrible and fair, let's say, well, it was okay. And between okay and fair, let's say it was good. How's that? So if we now go back to our staff friendliness graph, it's changed those terrible, okay, fair, good, and excellent. But there's one other thing that we need to look at here, and we've got, it looks like 3 things graphed on this chart. But there's only one thing graphed. There's only this grey line here, which according to this is series 3. So let's look at where this has come from. And this is the reason for doing this graph, really, was to show you this. When we selected the titles and the data, we actually selected the titles and the data, but we also selected an empty column here and an empty column here, because this started off as 3 separate columns and we merged it. Now you didn't do this, this was when you were given the spreadsheet. But this is to show you how something like that can cause weird things to happen with graphs. Okay? It tells us we've graphed a series 2 and a series 3, but we haven't. We know we've just got a graph of this one set of data here. Now let's not get tied in knots about this. Let's just do the simple thing here, and we'll just delete that. We don't actually need it. And what we'll do is we'll call it, the chart title, a radar graph of staff friendliness. Okay? So we can see now, it's a graph of staff friendliness. Very few people thought it was terrible. Most people thought it was okay, fair, or good, but some people thought it was excellent. Not all that many. So if I was the shop owner, I might want to try and work on this, work with my staff to try and get more people saying they were excellent. Okay? But it's not too bad. You get the idea how that works. It's quite a nice graph there. What we can do now then is we could do the same thing also for helpfulness. I'm not going to bother, but we could go ahead and do it. And for that one, we'd select these titles. We'd have to hold the control key this time, select that data, and then go on and create a graph for it. And again, we could do the same for the likelihood of recommendation. Interestingly, we can see that 19 people here say they just wouldn't recommend it. They think it's terrible. However, another 19 people say they would. And again, if you look at these figures here, most people are kind of up in the better end of things. So it's about interpreting this information, and graphs certainly help. They certainly make it a much more visual thing. It's a visual representation of the data. We can see much more readily how things are going. So let's just look at that then. Let's go back to the start. We started off with a gender pie chart. We created 2 of those, remember, just to demonstrate how that works. And we can see that we've got a fair spread here of males, females, people who chose not to tell us, and people who are something other than male, female, or simply chose to opt out. So obviously in these days we are much more accepting and understanding of LGBTQ plus community, and that's why we've got some people in this section here. Had we done this same survey way back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, you'd probably only have male or female. But we live in changed times, and that's good. It shows that we've got a really good cross-section of the population using our shop. Similarly, ages of people involved, we chose to do this as a column chart, and we can see that we've actually got fair numbers from all different ages coming into shop. So we're not just catering for the elderly, we're not just catering for teenagers, we're catering for all sections of the community. So that's really good. That's excellent. It means we're going to get more sales, which is better for the shop. And again, we've done 2 graphs of that. I can't remember why, but we did. The average amount spent. Now, we chose to do this as a line graph, and looking at it now, do you know what? I'm not all that happy with it. But here's the good thing. I can choose to change this at this point without having to go back and redo the whole thing. It's very easy. So I've clicked on the graph, and if I click on Design, Chart Tools Design, I can click on this icon to change this chart type. And I could do this to any graph that we've created or any chart that we've created. I can change it now. It doesn't mean we're going to have to retype all the titles and reselect the data. We can just change it. So let's change the chart type, and let's go to let's go to a column graph. Okay, and I think we'll go for this one just because it's nice and straightforward. 2 clicks, there you go. Bob's your uncle. It's changed. So our titles are still there, our title for a chart is still there, our axis titles are still there. We've got our titles underneath each column, and so this to me makes much more sense now. I was never happy with that as a line graph, because the fact that how many people is this? These 29 people on average spent £31 to £50 in the shop. Is in no way related to the fact that these people only spent £11 to £30 in the shop. A line graph we would use if each thing was connected to the previous thing and to the thing that comes after it. In this case it's not really, so a line graph didn't really make sense. But because Excel's so flexible, it was very easy to change it. So again, that was just clicking up in Chart Tools on the Design tab and changing the chart type. Brilliant. So again, from this we can see that we've got a fair spread of people coming in and spending different amounts of money. Now if I was the shop owner, I might want to say, well, how can we push that up a bit? Owning a shop is all about making sales, making profit, making money. How can I push this up? How can I make these guys here spend a bit more? How can I make these guys spend a bit more? This is what this is all about. It's looking at the data, looking at what it tells us and thinking, how can we make this shop perform better? Okay, so the next graph we had was our scatter plot. We can see we've got a nice correlation here between friendliness and helpfulness, and that's brilliant. We would hope from that from our staff. And we can also see what our most popular items are on people's wish lists. Okay, so if I was only going to stock a few of these, I'd probably definitely pick CDs and books because that's what most people want. If we look at what they don't want, they definitely don't want Blu-rays. A few people didn't want books and a few people didn't want CDs, but those are easily overruled by the people who did. Look at the figures. Okay, a large number of people wanted those as opposed to those people who didn't want those. So again, if you're thinking about potential sales you're going to make in the shop, things you want to stock so you know people will buy them to make you profit, then you're going to pay attention to this information. And the last thing we created was this staff friendliness chart, because although the correlation was clear to see here, it didn't really tell us what people thought of our staff. It just told us there was this correlation between helpfulness and friendliness. So staff friendliness, we can see that most people think staff are okay, or they're fair, or they're good. They're quite friendly. A few people thought they were terrible, and a few people thought they were excellent. Again, if I was the shop owner, I'd be wanting to look at this and think, right, how can I push it so that give staff more training, give staff more incentives to be better members of staff, to be more friendly in the shop, so it can push us up. Friendlier staff means you're going to get more people coming in, more return customers coming in, which means you make more sales, which is better for you and better for the shop. So that's the purpose of doing this exercise. We've taken all this data that people have given us. We've done lots of different things to it. We've done lots of clever tricks like grouping it and filtering it and all this kind of stuff. And then ultimately we went ahead to take this data and create graphs and charts to see exactly what's going on, and that helps us to work out what changes we can make to make our shop better. Now you're perhaps wondering at this point, well, what's it all about? Why are we doing this? Well, you'll recall that a few weeks ago you as a class created a survey which has been sent out to the public, and we're waiting on their results coming in. As the last assessment for this unit, what you need to do is to get that data in and to see if it answered the question that you initially set when you created that survey. Now, many different classes are doing this course, so I'm not going to talk about specifics here in this video. What you need to do now is think about, what was the question we asked when we created our survey? What was it we were trying to answer? When we get the data back, which of these tricks that we've learned in this video, which of these tricks can we employ to our survey, the data we receive in our survey, to try to find out what's going on and to find out if we can answer the question we originally set. So, well done for working through this video. It's been a long one, but there's been lots of opportunities to stop and think about what's going on. Of course, you can always watch it again. You can rewind it to various parts that you think you didn't get the first time round. Well done for sticking with it though, because it has been a long one, and hopefully you will be able to take some of these tricks and tips forward and use them when you start to analyse your data you get from the survey you sent out a couple of weeks ago. That's the end of this video. Well done for sticking with it. Bye now.